Hi, I'm Mirabelle Jones, a PhD student in human-centered computing at the University of Copenhagen, presenting my paper with co-authors Christina Neumayer and Irina Shklovski, Embodying the Algorithm, Exploring Relationships with Large Language Models Through Artistic Performance. If you're curious about the performances here presented, please visit aiperformance.space for excerpts. From attachments to early chatbots to present-day claims of romance and sentience, natural language processing has been an area of interest when it comes to how we relate to and personify algorithmic systems. However, in these discussions, we tend to forget about how these systems impact bodies. In our paper, we use artistic approaches to explore relations with large language models through a lens of embodiment to probe the limits of collaboration and relating to these systems. We selected endurance performance art as our primary artistic approach. Endurance performance art is a type of performance in which an artist performs within a set of constraints over a length of time, or until a condition is met. The constraints for each performance are called rules of engagement. For example, in Marina Abramovich's Rhythm Zero, her rules of engagement invited the audience to use 72 objects on her at will, with her taking complete responsibility for 6 hours. During the performance, people pressed thorns into her stomach, slashed her clothes, and held a loaded gun to her head. Endurance performances like these often probe the limits of the body. We were interested in what it would be like for performance artists to create performances based on rules of engagement written by a large language model. We selected 5 performance artists following a pilot study of 4 performances by the first author. Each performance artist selected from the pre-generated instructions, or the performers worked with me to produce new writing using the playground environment. The performers then interpreted the sets of instructions in a recorded performance using a webcam in their home studio. In all cases, the performance artists had to make the decisions about how to interpret the sets of instructions. This was often challenging, uncomfortable, or impossible due to the generated instructions. For example, this piece instructs the performer to continue until they die. We conducted semi-structured interviews with all of the performers and used thematic analysis on interview transcripts and artist statements. We identified 3 modes of sense-making and 3 relations performers formed with GPT-3. Artists used 3 modes of sense-making to make sense of the instructions from GPT-3. Many of the performers used the sense-making mode of personification, considering GPT-3 either as a person or as a group of people. They expressed a desire to relate to and collaborate with the model, even as they recognized this was an impossibility, as GPT-3 was incapable of providing feedback or engaging in anything but a one-way relation. Performers also made sense through interpretation of the instructions, which could often be unclear or abusive. Rena Rodan interpreted the instruction, "sacrifice a cake by night," to mean devouring an entire birthday cake in one go. This interpretation, which came from her experience growing up in a cult where she was not allowed to have birthday cakes, provided a meaningful frame for her in which to relate to the performance. While interpretation occurred in the moment, reflexivity was a mode of sense-making performers used in hindsight. Speaking of the performance box, Marissa Lynn communicated the action of eating a banana all at once as being distinctly different from how she would normally eat a banana. She describes the act of eating it continuously as making her very aware of her body. These modes of sense-making resulted in a number of relations to GPT-3. Agonistic relations arose in response to GPT-3's disregard for the body, for example, to instructions asking for harmful or impossible results, such as dying and coming back to life to complete a task. Performers pushed back against instructions like these by interpreting them according to what was possible for them to perform. They also personified GPT-3 to question human-like motivations and intentionalities that ultimately didn't exist. In perfunctory relations, performers simply carried out the instructions one after another. One performer described this as adopting the perspective of do thing, do next thing. Reflection was the primary mode of sense-making used here, as performers did not question or become emotionally invested in their actions during the performance, but made sense of these actions in hindsight. Where agreeable relations were possible, performers often turned to personification as a primary mode of sense-making. Some performers expressed admiration for GPT-3, even praising the model's ability to know them. In nearly all cases, these modes of relating were not in isolation. Performers shifted from one mode of relating to another throughout the experience. This indicates designers should consider the complexity of the ways people relate to algorithmic systems and the material consequences these may have for the body. Recognizing the rigidity of algorithms, we show pushback, while always possible, incurs difficulties and hazards where agency to pushback is not provided. This is not always the case in the real world, where algorithms may also direct or constrain human behaviors. It is important to consider the effect of algorithmic systems on the body and grant users agency to push back where these limitations are overstepped. Despite understanding the reality of GPT-3's limits as a large language model incapable of providing a two-way relationship, performers still could not resist having such a relation. They desired feedback, consideration, meaningful iterations, and an intentionality about their performances from GPT-3. However, this was not possible, as GPT-3 is a large language model incapable of consideration, forming meaning, or having any intention. The lack of consideration, the impossibility of actually forming meaning, and lack of intentionality in algorithmic systems challenges attempts to design for collaboration between humans and AI. Two main takeaways are that, first, algorithmic systems are incapable of considering the limits of the body, and pushback makes human agency visible. This should be considered in the design and implementation of algorithmic systems. Secondly, even when people know they are being confronted with an algorithm, they may still try to personify it and form relations with it, but only relations to it are possible. This comes into conflict with the ideas of design for collaboration with algorithmic systems. Thank you, and please feel free to visit aiperformance.space to see excerpts of the performances.